She was my only child, the one whose newborn fingers once gripped mine with fierce trust. Yet on a damp Ohio evening, I smelled something wrong in the steam rising off a plate she said was especially for you, and my love turned into calculation. You're watching Revenge Files. Subscribe for a new twist daily. There is a limit to what a mother will ignore, even when the threat wears her daughter's face, especially when money and deadlines press like a vice and one small decision might mean losing your house, your savings, and the last clean thread of family. I live in Westerville, Ohio, a quiet suburb where oaks shade porches and the garbage trucks rumble at dawn. I'm 62, a bookkeeper who still uses a paper ledger to sleep better at night. My daughter Ava is 34, brilliant, stubborn, born fast. She married Mark Sutton, an ICU nurse with patient hands and the kind of shoulders that carry other people's emergencies home. Together they have a 5-year-old, Lily, and a small storefront on State Street called Halo and Hearth. It started as a candle shop and grew into a wellness boutique when someone told Ava words like apothecary and artisan sell better in March. By May, Ava had expansion fever. She pitched a second location near the short north, talked about wholesale orders, and then asked me for $200,000. She made it sound like a weather report. Inevitable, factual, already moving. I had helped with smaller amounts when they opened, $12,000 for the first month's rent and fixtures, documented with a simple promissory note I typed on my kitchen table. This new ask would rip into the retirement I had built one receipt at a time. "Mom, we'll pay it back in a year," she said on May 3, 2024, standing at my sink with a towel she never actually used. "Our margins are finally real. We just need the push. You'll be part of something that has momentum." I had spent 37 years reconciling other people's optimism against bank statements. "Ava, show me 12 months of clean books," I said. "Then we'll talk." Her smile cracked. "You don't believe in me. I won't mortgage my house to buy speed," I said. "I believe in math." That was the fight. It was small in words and huge in weather. She left. "My calendar shows one line that day," Ava asked. $200,000. I underlined it twice and then went to the bank to get a new safe deposit box because something in me turned cold. I changed the beneficiary on my own life insurance to a trust for Lily. A mother's gut is a ledger too. 3 days later, on May 6th, the special dinner invitation arrived by text at 3:11 p.m. Ava wrote, "Come at 7. I made something especially for you. You'll see I can take care of us." She added a heart I could not read. I told myself she was trying to mend the fight. I told myself refusing dinner would be dramatic. I told myself 100 small lies, and still, when I parked outside their gray Craftsman, I locked my purse in the trunk and walked in with only my phone. The house smelled like something sweet turned sharp. Not garlic, not onion. Like a cherry that had been kept in a metal drawer. Mark set the table. Lily danced in socks. Ava brought out 2 plates from the kitchen and announced, "This one is for you, Mom. It's special." She said it lightly, but there was a glint of pressure behind the word special, like a door wedged open with a crowbar. I have done small, quiet things all my life that make big differences, double-checking a decimal, putting a stamp on the right envelope before a deadline. At the table, I did another. I set my napkin on the plate meant for me and said, "Lily, look, a magic trick," then switched plates with Mark while I moved the napkin. It took less than 3 seconds. Ava blinked. She laughed. Mark smiled, confused but gracious, and lifted his fork. I tasted the other dish. It was salmon with a crust I could not name. The first bite made my tongue feel heavy. I drank water and talked about Lily's drawing pinned to the fridge. I kept my face plain. An hour later, Mark went pale. He was sweating at his temples. He stood to get air, then gripped the back of the chair. "Heart's beating weird," he said, trying to make it a joke. He slid down the wall before I could help him. Ava reached for her phone with slow hands. I dialed 911 and said the address and the words I knew they needed. Adult male. Difficulty breathing. Sudden onset. Possible poisoning. Ava stared at me as if I'd read a script she had not written. The paramedics moved like a calm storm. They asked about allergies, food, meds. Mark was conscious but barely. He kept saying, "I'm okay," which is what men say when they aren't. I followed the ambulance in my car, the hazard lights blinking like the dotted line between the mother I had been and the one I had to become. At Riverside Methodist, the ER smelled like antiseptic and diner coffee. They stabilized Mark. A nurse asked what he ate. I answered. Ava stood next to me, small, shaking with what looked like fear, though not all fears for the same thing. The nurse asked if there were leftovers. Yes, I said. A portion in a covered container. Ava opened her mouth, closed it, then said, I threw it out. Her voice wobbled, her eyes did not. I texted a neighbor with a spare key and asked him to put whatever food was on the counter into a plastic bag and leave it in my mailbox. I didn't write the word that sat in me like a nail, evidence. Mark stabilized enough to nod. The toxicology screen would take time. The attending doctor told us to go home, rest, and wait for an update. Ava hugged herself. She would not meet my eyes. I drove her back. On the way she said, You overreacted. I kept my voice even, did I? At home I fetched the bag from my mailbox and placed it in my trunk. I called the Columbus Division of Police and asked for whoever handled suspicious poisonings. The detective who answered, Sergeant Nolte, spoke with steady boredom, which I respected. I told him I had leftovers. I told him my son-in-law had collapsed, that the smell had been wrong, that my daughter announced, a special plate meant only for me. I did not cry. He said, Bring the food to the property room at 120 Marconi Boulevard first thing in the morning. I set my alarm for 5:30 and made coffee I didn't drink. But then, at 1:12 a.m., my phone buzzed with something I hadn't asked for. Mark texted from the ER. They think something in the food caused it. Not shellfish, something else. Doc says it's consistent with a cyanogenic compound. I'm okay. They're keeping me overnight. The word cyanogenic felt like a match struck in the dark. I put the phone down and looked at the framed photo of Ava at 5, her face fierce with birthday cake frosting. I told the photo, I will not look away. I delivered the container and the 2 plates to the property room when the doors opened. I signed a chain of custody form. The clerk put the items in a bin, with a number that looked like a password I did not want to memorize. On my way home I drove by Halo and Hearth. The display window glowed with candles that smelled like safety. I parked and watched 2 employees restock wicks and jars. Ava had built something pretty. Pretty can be a costume. I spent that morning doing the only thing that calms me. I opened a file. I titled it May 6. I printed our text thread. I pulled my copy of the old promissory note for $12,000. I logged into the county recorder's site and checked for liens, just to see if Ava or Mark had been pressed by something I didn't know. Clean. Next, I logged into my own life insurance portal to confirm the change I'd made 2 days earlier. The beneficiary showed the Lily Hart Trust, effective May 4th. I exhaled. Then curiosity nudged me toward a database I rarely used, the state insurance filing portal. You can't see much without authorization. But I confirmed that on February 21, someone had checked a rate for a $250,000 policy, my name as insured, through an independent agent. The data field didn't show who submitted the inquiry. There was only a timestamp. I printed it anyway. I had one more place to check. Last fall, Ava asked me to help reconcile the Shop Square account. I still had view access. The sales looked better than the year before. Expenses gobbled the gains. In March and April, there were charges to a chemical supply vendor I didn't recognize. 2 small orders, $89 and $129. The name meant nothing to me until I clicked the URL. Their homepage sold essential oil equipment and plant extracts. My hands went cold. Many harmless products. A few that weren't harmless, when misused. I printed those receipts and put them in the file. Except printing doesn't pick up a phone call. At 3:04 p.m., Ava called me. How is Mark? I asked. Fine, she said. They think it was bad fish. Mom, I need you to stop spinning this. I gave the leftovers to the police, I said. Silence. Then, too bright, why would you do that? Because Mark almost died, I said, and because you told me the plate was made especially for me. She inhaled sharply. You think I would hurt you? I think money does strange arithmetic, I said. Come by at 5 if you want to talk. Bring your books. Show me how the second location works on paper. She hung up. She did not arrive at 5. At 6, Sergeant Nolte called. Preliminary lab shows a cyanogenic compound in the leftover glaze, he said. Not shellfish, not an allergy. The concentration wasn't industrial, but it was enough to cause what your son-in-law experienced. We'll need statements. He explained the next steps the way people explain a recipe for a cake no one should eat. Record interviews, consult the county prosecutor, decide whether to move forward. I told him I would come in the morning. That night, I didn't sleep. I walked the length of my house and stopped in the doorway of the spare bedroom where a twin bed holds Lily's purple comforter for sleepovers. I pictured her toes pushing the blanket to the floor and the soft, certain way children assume the world will catch them. I would not let this make her an orphan of trust. The next morning, I made 2 new moves. First, I hired an attorney. Her name is Janine Morales. She has kind eyes and the precise impatience of someone who respects time. I paid a $7,500 retainer without blinking. Second, I asked Mark to meet me at my kitchen table when he was discharged. He came at noon, gray but steady. He filled a glass, sipped, and said, "Evelyn, I know what you think. I'm not ready to think it. I'm not asking you to accuse your wife," I said. "I'm asking if your home cameras caught the kitchen last night." He paused. "Only the living room points that direction." He looked at the wall clock the way nurses do when measuring pain. "But the app logs motion. I can pull the timeline." He opened the Nest app. On May 6, between 6:34 and 6:42 p.m., the living room camera registered repeated entries and exits from the kitchen. Nothing remarkable there. But he tapped one clip where Ava set a brown bottle on the console table to answer a text. The label faced away. He pinched to zoom. The glass was amber. The cap was black. My skin tightened. "Mark," I said, "where is that bottle now?" He closed his eyes. "Probably in the trash." We drove to his house with an empty tote and nitrile gloves from his hospital locker. We went straight to the trash can and found, beneath coffee grounds, an amber bottle with a torn label. The remaining letters spelled Nate. I didn't need the rest. Mark stared at it as if it might speak. "What did she do?" he whispered. He took photos. We sealed the bottle in a zip bag. With Janine's advice on speaker, we delivered it to the property room and signed another chain of custody form. We kept our voices flat. We did not look like heroes. We looked like 2 people carrying something that could explode. Until that afternoon, I had believed the worst part would be waiting. It wasn't. The worst was Ava calling at 5:19 p.m. and saying, "Bright and brittle, Mom, I think we should put everything behind us. You're scaring Lily with all this police nonsense. If you keep this up, I won't bring her over anymore." It was a threat dressed as concern. "I recorded this call," I said. "Ohio is a one-party consent state, and I was the party. You just told me you'll keep Lily from me if I cooperate with police." She exhaled like a hiss. "You're choosing strangers over your daughter. Remember that." She hung up. I wrote a note about the call with the time and saved the recording. I printed it for the file. Then I made tea and trembled for 8 minutes, the length of the timer on my oven that I set for no reason, except that when it ends it always surprises me. The formal interviews happened on May 8 at the station. Janine sat beside me. I told the detective everything from the smell to the switch. I did not dramatize. Mark gave his statement after mine. He did not accuse his wife outright. He described the bottle and the motion clips and the taste he couldn't name. He kept closing his eyes like each sentence cost him extra oxygen. When we left, Nolte said, "We'll confer with the prosecutor tomorrow." But then, life is skilled at adding. Janine visited Halo and Hearth at opening time on May 9th with a single purpose: to hand Ava a letter. It wasn't a threat. It was a demand for repayment on the old $12,000 note, plus interest, due within 10 days. If she didn't pay, we would file a civil claim and place a lien on any business assets through judgment. Janine wasn't sure we'd ever see the money, but she wanted a lever. Civil pressure creates conversations people can't avoid, she told me, and those conversations tend to be under oath. Ava took the letter and ripped it, which is not a legal defense. She whispered something harsh that I could not hear through the glass. Then she called me. "You're trying to bury me," she said. "I'm trying not to be buried," I answered. "Pay what you owe or bring your books and prove I'm wrong." 2 hours later, an email from the county prosecutor landed in Janine's inbox. The lab had confirmed the compound in the glaze was cyanogenic, consistent with a concentrated plant extract, often sold online for wellness claims. The bottle from Ava's trash matched residue on the plate meant for me. The content wasn't a lethal dose for an average adult male, but significant for a smaller person. The phrase "especially for you" was noted. The office would present the case to a grand jury the following week. A temporary no-to-contact order would be requested for me and Mark. I read the email twice. The words were sand and steel at once. I walked to the window, looked at my lilac bush in bloom, and felt a grief so pure it had no edges. I had raised a child with my hands full of hope and recipe cards, and now I was printing an email about a grand jury because she had cooked a glaze. The news broke our family into pieces that still fit together if you tried too hard. My sister from Dayton called and cried. My ex-husband, Ava's father, said the only smart thing he has ever said, "Do what keeps Lily safe." Mark moved into a short-term rental near Riverside. He came by in the evenings to sit on my back steps, and we would not talk about the big thing for several minutes at a time. I expected Ava to lawyer up and go quiet. She didn't. She went loud. She posted a story on Instagram about toxic parents and false accusations. She told friends I had gone senile. She showed up at my house on May 12 with lilies and a camera pointed at her own face, narrating as if my front porch were a set. I closed the door. She banged once and left the lilies. I threw them away. The elegance of that choice was not lost on me. The grand jury indicted Ava on May 16 for attempted poisoning and tampering with evidence. A warrant issued. She surrendered the next day with a business attorney at her side and eyes that looked husked. The arraignment was brief. She pled not guilty. Bond was set. The no-contact order covered me and Mark. It did not cover Lily because Lily is not a tool and the court is careful with children. Lily stayed with Mark under a temporary parenting plan the family court helped draft overnight. For once, systems moved like a river with a clear channel. Midpoint brings a surge, Janine had said. It arrived the following week with a brown accordion folder Mark found at the shop when he went to collect Lily's favorite stuffed rabbit. It contained their business insurance paperwork, and behind it, a copy of an application for a life insurance policy on me dated March 1, 2024, unsigned but typed with my full legal name, birth date, and address. The agent was out of town, but his office confirmed Ava had inquired and scheduled an appointment she then skipped. I could feel the logic form like frost on a window. Ask for $200,000. Take out a policy for $250,000. Plan a future that pays out because grief is bankable if you're the beneficiary. Mark took the folder straight to the prosecutor. One problem, prosecutors like clean lines from intent to act. Ava would argue the dinner was a mistake, a mislabeled ingredient, a trend gone wrong. The policy inquiry was only an inquiry, no signatures. The glaze residue was the residue Mark and I delivered. Defense would say we were biased, that we wanted to ruin her. I could hear the closing arguments before they were written, so I returned to the thing I trust, records. I asked Janine if we could subpoena the vendor for the extract order logs. She nodded. She also filed the civil suit for the $12,000 note, which would require Ava to answer questions under oath in a deposition. Even if she invokes the fifth on anything criminal, Janine said, money talk still has to walk. The court granted our request to fast-track the deposition because of the overlapping criminal case. A date was set for June 5. In the meantime, code enforcement visited Halo and Hearth. That wasn't my doing. A customer had complained about unlabeled wellness products. The inspector issued a written warning and a $500 fine for misbranding. When small coins fall on a tight drum, the sound can be louder than you expect. Ava had to close for 2 days to relabel jars. Revenue sagged, employees whispered. The second location dream, that glittering thing, began to fold like paper in rain. June 5 came hot and bright. The deposition room felt like an office party conference room emptied of cake. A court reporter sat under a framed photo of a sailboat. Janine asked calm questions. Ava arrived with her attorney, who wore cufflinks that looked like little shields. Ava's hands trembled, but her posture was perfect. When Janine asked about the $12,000, Ava said it was a gift. Janine slid the promissory note across the table. Ava looked at it and said, I don't remember signing. Janine pointed to a watermark in the corner. My old home printer left a faint repeating dot pattern we could match to other documents in Ava's file. It was like watching a locksmith line up pins. Ava's attorney asked for a break. When we resumed, Janine asked about business purchases. She slid in the receipts for the chemical supply orders. What did you use these extracts for? Janine asked. Candles, Ava said. Food-grade extracts and candles? Janine asked, mild as weather. People love clean ingredients, Ava said, and the court reporter's eyebrows rose a hair. On May 6, did you prepare a glaze at home with any of these products? Janine asked. Ava's attorney spoke. Fifth Amendment. Janine nodded and moved on, because sometimes proof arrives in the shape of silence. The civil judge issued a written finding on June 17, The promissory note was valid. Ava owed the principal plus interest and $1,900 in attorney's fees. A judgment lien attached to Halo and Hearth's fixtures and inventory. It wasn't about the money, it was a lever. 2 days later, the prosecutor made a plea offer, plead to a reduced felony count of attempted poisoning, except 2 years, suspended after 9 months served, 5 years probation, no contact orders intact, and restitution on the civil judgment through a payment plan starting at $300 per month. They had enough to win at trial, but trials are anvil songs and no one wanted Lily to hear the metal. Ava tried to negotiate. She asked for probation only. The prosecutor said no. She folded on June 24th. In the sentencing hearing, the judge read notes that sounded like a story a bored librarian would tell. A mother who kept a ledger, a daughter who chose risk, a dinner that smelled wrong. The judge said, "The phrase 'especially for you' changes this from carelessness to an attempt." She ordered 9 months in the county facility with early release eligibility after 6 for good behavior. She signed the no contact order for 5 years. She approved the restitution plan. She told Ava to get counseling inside. She looked at me once and said nothing I could quote. It felt like both a blessing and a sentence that I had to carry myself. Consequences ripple. Mark filed for divorce in July. It settled by October without a trial. He received primary custody of Lily. Exchanging Lily with her mother for supervised weekend visits happened at a center with a mural of sunflowers. Lily learned to pack her backpack like a flight attendant. Children can become professionals at survival without choosing the job. Halo and Hearth limped through summer. The lien meant that any attempt to sell inventory or change ownership had to address the judgment first. Eventually, in August, a larger boutique offered to buy the remaining stock and fixtures for $28,000. After subtracting employee wages, back rent, taxes, and my judgment, the check that reached Ava's inmate account for business proceeds was $0. I did not gloat. I filed the release of the lien the same day because clean paper is also a form of mercy. The hardest part wasn't court. It was the Tuesday evenings when Lily asked, "Is Mommy mad at me?" And I told her the truth a 5-year-old can hold. Mommy is sick in her choices, and grown-ups are helping her get better. We drew pictures. We baked cookies from a recipe Ava loved when she was 9. We waited for the timer. We did not talk about glaze. In late November, Ava stood in a courtroom again. This time it was for a review hearing. She had completed a counseling module called Accountability Pathways. The counselor's letter said Ava showed emerging insight. The judge reduced the last 3 months of her sentence to an ankle monitor program. The no-contact order remained. When she walked out with the plastic band visible above her shoe, the air looked like it might break. I saw her from across the parking lot. She looked both older and exactly like the girl who used to sleep with braids so her hair would be wavy in the morning. She didn't look at me. I didn't expect her to. I wanted to run across the distance and ask her why she turned my body into a math problem. I wanted to hold her like I did when she had croup and believe breath can be borrowed. I didn't move. Love is not the same as permission. December brought small recalibrations. I sold the house I had worried might be at risk and bought a smaller one near a park with a pond. The proceeds after fees were clean. Mark moved 2 blocks away so Lily could run between our porches and mittens. Janine refused to take any more money once restitution started. "You already paid the cost," she said. I started volunteering at a financial literacy class at the library, teaching 20-somethings how to read a lease and how to ask a landlord to put promises in writing. If you want to save a person, give them a paper trail. On March 12, 2025, a full year after the first fight at my sink, the prosecutor's office emailed me a single paragraph. Ava had completed her initial conditions, was enrolled in the longer counseling track, and had complied with every check-in. The line that mattered wasn't legal. It was a sentence from a counselor's note. Client acknowledges planning language around special dinner, tied to desire for control. Planning language. I poured coffee and read that phrase 10 times until its shape became useful. It didn't make what happened smaller. It made my future decisions clearer. The last official piece came in writing. The restitution plan went through the clerk's automated system. Every month, $300 appeared in a placeholder account that Janine set up for me and Lily's trust. It wasn't about the amount. It was a clock, ticking forward, reminding me that the past had a frame, and the frame had an end. In 5 years, the total would be enough to cover 4 semesters at Columbus State. I marked each payment in my ledger with a small blue dot. I didn't write Ava's name beside them. I wrote Lily, future, because money should know where it's going. People think revenge is drama, flip tables, fireworks. Mine was paperwork and patience. It was showing up with leftovers in a bag and sitting straight while a judge read a line that hurt. It was protecting a child's bedtime. It was forcing the math to tell the truth in rooms where stories try to lie. It was also not dying. That matters too. I thought about the switch a lot, the 3 seconds at the table that rerouted an entire river. Mark sometimes sat with me on Sunday evenings after Lily went to bed, and we would count our breaths in the quiet. "You saved my life," he said once. "You saved your own," I answered, because both statements were true, and truth can live with roommates. In February of this year, after the snow melted into dirty lace along the curb, I opened the file marked May 6 and added one more document, a letter I wrote for myself, not for any court. It said, "You did not make your daughter do this. You did not invent the smell. You protected the life you were given and the one you gave. It's not weakness to remember the good parts of her. It's not betrayal to keep the bad parts from reaching you again." I signed it and put it under the promissory note where this all started. Paper covers paper. Sometimes that's the only blanket we get. I still keep a seat for Lily at my table with a plastic cup that sweats on summer evenings. Sometimes I cook salmon. I buy it fresh. I season it simply. When the steam rises, I pause and inhale because that is how the body learns it's safe again. The night of the special dinner, I learned to trust my nose as much as my records. Now when I plate the food, I place each dish where it belongs. Steady hands, quiet kitchen, no swaps needed. The smell is right, the math adds up.